bask in his glory. Keith Lee is all elite, and that's the conversation I want to have with everybody today on the show. Let's talk about Keith Lee as he has come over to AEW, and I think that this has just been a tremendous reveal, free agency signed, debut, however you want to phrase it. This is one of my favorite debuts across promotions that have been done in a considerable amount of time. I think that they handled it very well. What I have been very happy about with AEW is their ability to try different things when it comes to a reveal. Not everything lands. Not everything has been great with AEW specifically with their reveals, and they're gobbling up free agents here and there. And we have the likes of CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, and we've got Keith Lee now. We've had El Idolo. We've had so many stars come into the company, which is great. But not every reveal hits and lands and sticks the way we want it. This is an example to me of them doing it very well and doing it right. When Andrade came in, for example, I thought it was a clunky reveal. I didn't think it landed. I think it was kind of a whiff and a miss. I think the reveals we've had at All Out with Adam Cole, baby, boom, and we had with Bryan Danielson were tremendous. And Ruby Soho. We've had great reveals. This one, getting into a match right away, not doing a promo, just showcasing Keith Lee, really showed to me that AEW is on the right track, and they have me excited. And the way they presented Keith Lee and the match, the way it unfolded, and it was very much a showcase of Keith Lee's, potential and what he can do as a star and as a wrestler. I thought it was just a great showcase for him. Man, that guy is strong. There's a couple of things to note here when it comes to Keith Lee's debut. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is coming online is that when Tony Khan took on to Twitter after he had signed Keith Lee officially, he made an actually pretty interesting comment. This is coming over from Wrestle Talks. Khan admitted that when he initially made the announcement last week that there would be a debut, he quote, butchered his own definition of the Forbidden Door. This is because many people pointed out the fact that if the signing was just a free agent, which Lee was, why would that be considered forbidden? That's just signing someone who's available. That's what I thought. And I thought that was odd that Khan was going with the Forbidden Door aspect and he really wanted to push that forward when so many of us thought about Keith Lee being the most obvious pick to show up in AEW. WrestleTalks continues to say that Khan said that he listened to the feedback and it was only this past Sunday that he secured Jay White, appearing to make sure that he still delivered on the promise he had. So, had he not mentioned the Forbidden Door and people not pointed out the issue with that, we probably wouldn't have had White on the show last night either. So, on AEW Dynamite, we had the reveal and we had Switchblade Jay White show up. And I love Jay White and how he has evolved from New Japan and his time in Impact and Bullet Club and the storylines that he's doing. He's fantastic. I watched Dynamite like so many of us did. And for me, sitting here on my couch, I thought, that was kind of a letdown. He just showed up with Adam Cole and the Young Bucks. Thought it was good, but it left me wanting more. Now, I did love that he had the giant grin on his face and he shows his shirt and his little merch, and then that was it. But what this did was a little bit of a swerve when it came to Keith Lee's reveal, because we all really thought it was going to be Keith Lee. Maybe a Jeff Hardy, but we really were leaning on Keith Lee. And what I liked was the way they positioned this in the card. You had the backstage segment with Jay White, and then you were going to get into the Revolution qualifying match with Isaiah Cassidy. And they didn't announce who it was going to be. At first glance, you might have thought it's actually going to be Switchblade. And then we get Keith Lee. We get limitless Keith Lee in AEW. There are so many things I want to unpack here. But I love number one, his entrance music is awesome. And it feels like Keith Lee. Not WWE rebranding it, redoing it, trying to make it their own thing. This feels like him. And when he came out on the entrance ramp, number one, the pop was huge. The crowd loved it. And he had a giant smile on his face. And I loved how they brought him in. When you had the actual match between Keith Lee and Isaiah Cassidy, first of all, Private Party and the way that they reacted to Keith Lee, his music hitting and him coming out, they made it feel like a big deal. Their reaction was this, oh no, like, holy crap, we're in for it. We're in trouble. Matt Hardy's expression was priceless. Him leaving later on in the match was incredible. It really made it feel big, and it made it feel special, and it made a reveal that Dynamite, where again I have said that they had struggled, in my opinion, to nail it on every single reveal and debut. This is where I feel like they've really started to bring and elevate their game more. This felt like a big time reveal. Keith Lee's in the match, and he chucks, like destroys and throws Cassidy through the sky to the other end of the ring. Kudos to Isaiah Cassidy for bumping, for moving the way he did for Keith Lee. Not that Keith Lee needs someone to put him over, but kudos to him for being a great dance partner in this, because this was, again, a showcase of Keith Lee. It was really spectacular. That throw across the ring, I need you to tell me, but because this was, wow. Like, I couldn't believe the height he got on that thing. And the smile off of Keith Lee's face and the reaction from commentary. It was incredible. Jim Ross had the opening line and said, "I've heard nothing but great things about this young man. We're so happy he's here in AEW." Keith Lee used the crossbody, the slingshot into a crossbody onto Cassidy, and Keith Lee did a clothesline on him. They actually had a decent match too that wasn't just a squash, which I really did like. Sometimes it just comes in, big man comes in and he demolishes us. We see this with Keith Lee and, WWE. We've seen this with Braun Strowman. We see this with so many of the larger athletes coming in, having basically a squash match. It's great to see them, but I like that this was a little bit more competitive. Not that Isaiah Cassidy had much of a chance, because it just looked terrifying how gigantic Keith Lee was in the ring. I love that during the match too, Matt Hardy walked out on Private Party. Like, just nuts to this. I'm out. They're done. Mark Quinn grabbed the boot of Keith Lee at one point, and this allowed Cassidy, he hit a corkscrew over the top rope, and then Keith Lee returned to the ring and he just shrugged it off like it was absolutely nothing. This was hilarious. And it just, again, it showed the absolute power of Keith Lee. I thought it was really great. When Lee hoisted up Cassidy, he then power slammed him with like a massive, massive power slam. And he got the pin. Then they had the moment outside where he power bombed them onto each other. Like, they were going to get the upper hand after the match. They had a post-match beatdown. And I kind of thought, like, oh man, why are they going to do this? Why are you going to do this to Keith Lee? You want him to stand strong. But he did that powerbomb spot and then powerbombed him onto the apron. The sound that it made, it was just massive. He absolutely destroyed him. And Keith Lee gets a huge moment by qualifying in the Revolution qualifying match for the upcoming pay-per-view, which I really love, because you can put Keith Lee, get him in there for a title shot to become TNT champion. I was hoping at first, that thinking about all of it, that Keith Lee would come in and just, win the TNT title on the first night. But to have him in the qualifying tournament, it allows Keith Lee to go for a couple of weeks to showcase more and more and more, show them the moonsault, show just way more, and have matches with different sized opponents to really showcase what he can do at different levels. Big man versus big man, him versus like Miro would be fantastic too. Him versus more athletic guys. Keith Lee can do so much. This is what makes it really exciting for AEW, is to get a giant name like this. And we got to remember, when he was in NXT, his entrance into NXT wasn't top notch. It was only till later in NXT that, we saw him really come alive, and he clicked and it all started working, and then got scooped up by main roster. But even in his main roster debut with WWE, he was highly profiled. He had the moments with Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. He had a clean win over Randy Orton. Those are big, big things. And then they completely derailed it from WWE by putting a t-shirt on him. They've changed his music, obviously. He had to leave for personal reasons. The start and stop with him on main roster, I don't think many of us, if we are fans of Keith Lee, I don't think we could really understand why WWE did this, especially from Vince McMahon's perspective, who traditionally loves giant, larger-than-life athletes that have personality. It seems like Keith Lee checked all those boxes, and they let him go. Keith Lee, in my opinion, has the opportunity to really stand out, and he feels more at home. This is only the first night, but he feels very much at home with AEW, and it was great to hear the crowd chant "Bask in his glory." We have a lot to look forward to when it comes to Keith Lee, and I cannot wait to see what he does next, because he's limitless. Ronda Rousey won the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble, and I got some thoughts on that. When Rousey came in, it got leaked out that she was going to come in to the Royal Rumble. So it wasn't a crazy surprise when she did come in, and it wasn't a crazy surprise either that she won. To backtrack for a second, I thought the Women's Royal Rumble match itself was really solid. I loved seeing all the legends. Shout out to Alicia Fox. Shout out to Michelle McCool. She went in the lady gym and got all buffed up and ready to go in that Rumble, tossing people left and right, holding that bottom rope for Michelle. That's my lame Undertaker, by the way. Ronda Rousey comes in towards the end of the pay-per-view, and she ends up winning, and she does what she needed to do, point at the WrestleMania sign, like she has done, and off we go. Ronda Rousey has a promo then on Raw, and we get the fun of, where's she going to go? Is she going to take on Becky Lynch? Is she going to go and face Charlotte at WrestleMania? We know how this turns out. WWE really, they do this with the men's side, they do this with the women's side. And this is what frustrates me, and then we'll talk about Ronda Rousey very specifically. There are some storylines within WWE Women's Division that are working, that they could elevate more. Bianca Belair, focal point for the year, across SmackDown, Raw. We dip her down a little bit so we can bring up Liv Morgan a little bit more. Then you've got Ronda Rousey coming in and scooping up all of that airtime and scooping up all of that focus and taking all the attention away from stars like Bianca. Now, we do know where her WrestleMania match, Ronda Rousey's WrestleMania match, is going to go. But you get the promo on Raw. You get Ronda Rousey and you get Becky Lynch. And when Ronda comes out, she has this air about her coming out. She very much, in my opinion, as a viewer, as a person who knows nothing, just a long-time wrestling fan, she comes to the ring and she really seems to wear it on her face in terms of how she's feeling personally. And she talked about this in an interview too, and I'm only paraphrasing, but she essentially said, based off of the backstage reports, I'll say, the Dave Meltzers of the world. So we take it with a bit of a grain of salt. But the feeling that is that backstage she's been told to kind of like, be more professional and get it together because you're playing a character, and she has a hard time, supposedly, according to rumors and internet speculation, that she has a hard time separating Ronda Rousey the character and Ronda Rousey the person. So when she goes out on Raw and she starts cutting this promo and the crowd doesn't respond the way she wants them to respond to her, She doesn't like it. It's wrestling, man. It's pro wrestling. You're there to tell stories. It's a fascinating thing to me because we see stars like Brock Lesnar come and go. And you see this current run of Brock Lesnar. And I mention Brock and to compare him only because somebody who has won the Royal Rumble, whose storyline has been taking up the entire, better half of a year almost. And not in a bad way. I've actually enjoyed Brock's face run. The Roman Reigns storyline is fantastic. It's had ups and downs. But Brock comes in and still keeps it professional and does what Brock needs to do. Ronda, on the other hand, is not pleased with how fans seem to be reacting to her, and I want to know what everybody else thinks out there about that. Should she care? Should she twist her position or her on-screen character? And I will say that just from my perspective sitting here and, armchair quarterback, her demeanor ruined that Raw segment for me, and for me, ruined her momentum into a WrestleMania match that she's going to ultimately have with Charlotte. Because something that could have been exciting, whether it was going to be Becky Lynch versus Ronda or it's Charlotte versus Ronda, to me, it took off all the momentum and potential of what a match like that could be based off of how she handled that first promo back on Raw. And the crowd just kind of went, eh. Because she was supposed to come out as a babyface. Now, the pop and everything she got at the Royal Rumble, huge. WWE edits it too. They go for the big crowd shots. But watching it live myself, Ronda's reveal in the Women's Rumble, huge. Happy to see her. Amazing pop. She won. Good reception. Came out on Raw. And the fact is, when she stood in the ring on Raw and just kind of half held the microphone to her shoulder and then would talk and then dangle the mic over to the side and then talk again and back and forth. She looked disinterested. She didn't look passionate. She didn't look like she cared to even be there. And I think, in my opinion, the audience picked up on that instantly. And she didn't like it. And then we got the promo that we did. Then she goes over to SmackDown and she has the promo and the match confirmed, her versus Charlotte. But this puts WWE in an interesting position, and not a good one, to me. Because Ronda is supposed to be the face, it seems. Now, and Charlotte has been pushing as heel forever now. And we get this Charlotte-Ronda match happening at Mania, which probably is going to headline one of the nights because it's Ronda Rousey. And then Roman and Brock will headline night 2. Plan subject to change of always. But I can't help but feel that this Ronda Charlotte match and the build is going to just be because we're not really interested as fans. I think a lot of us are not that interested in Charlotte Flair in general right now. Not without a very big opponent for her to fight against. Somebody new, an up-and-comer. Somebody that WWE built, but the problem is that they haven't been building the women's division enough other than key players like Bianca, which is great, but you have a very, very deep, talented roster. And they don't showcase them enough in prominent positions. And then you get a Ronda Rousey coming in at the last minute, taking up that giant Mania spot. I get it. It's a spectacle. You want to have that. But I'm always the one that looking at what happens next. What do we do down the road? You're going to get through this Mania build between Charlotte and Ronda. Maybe Ronda's there every week, but it's probably going to be a lot of just promo back and forth, back and forth. And then maybe you're going to have a proxy in Shayna Baszler fighting for Ronda and fighting against Charlotte as they lead up to it. And to that I say, so what? What's the big deal? And then when we get to the Mania match, I wonder what stakes they're actually going to put in there that are going to get people to care. How do you get Ronda Rousey to become face? Or do you have Charlotte become a face? And how do you pull that off? Because she's ingrained herself, Charlotte has, into becoming this super dominant heel, the top of the women's division. And I don't think it works anymore. because she doesn't leave any room for anybody to get over on her. Naomi would have been somebody to build up to that spot, because her versus the Authority, it's been a up and down storyline, but you could have had a tournament or something after the fact, after the Rumble, to have Naomi maybe come out on the other end to be able to earn that shot against Charlotte. And maybe Naomi wins, maybe she doesn't at Mania, but at least you would have somebody that's a little bit more fresh and has some story and stakes going into it. You could also have like Ronda Rousey just be like a special guest referee for a match like that. I know you want her to perform, but I'm really fascinated what WWE booking does to get Ronda Rousey over, and either over as a face, and they have to backpedal a little bit more and make her look dominant and do arm bars and all this stuff, or do they make her go heel, and then you have to flip Charlotte, and then or you're just gonna have two heels, and it's gonna be whatever. And then on the Raw brand, you get Becky Lynch, Lita right now, and then probably Bianca and Becky at Mania on the Raw side, and that's cool. But I don't think that Ronda's promos are really doing it. And I don't think they will. And I don't think they're going to change very much. She's a little too robotic and stiff and memorizing and saying the lines that she needs to say, do the thing, and then leaves. And it's like a bad version of Brock Lesnar, where fans used to get mad in the past that Brock just shows up and gets paid, and then he does a couple of moves and suplexes people and walks out, and he gets paid for it. And go, fine. We've had our ups and downs with Brock. Ronda, and people might say that, Ronda is still trying to learn the system and ring rust, get that off and all of that. She had a full year of WWE, and she had a full year of being in WWE, doing house shows, promos, big matches, huge matches. You got to kind of figure like she's got it figured out. She should know how to deliver those promos. But coming into it with that attitude, I think it really turned off a lot of fans. And I go back and say my bigger issue is, what do you do after Mania? Is Ronda around? Is it going to be just Ronda wins and then she is part-time champ, SmackDown champ? Great for Fox. They get huge publicity out of that by having Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey on Fox. And Roman Reigns. But do you have Charlotte win? Do you have some screwball finish with somebody else? I don't know. But I would have liked to see somebody else being able to come up in the ranks like a Naomi, a Rhea Ripley, somebody to be able to build up. Because if you're WWE, you want to be able to have, and they've shown this, they have a smaller roster now, and they're working towards a smaller roster with bigger headliners. They want bigger attractions. And I get it that Ronda is an attraction. But it's unfortunate that it's not clicking. And it didn't click at the tail end of her first run. Started off great, huge face, started to get a little snarky, started to make comments towards the crowd. Crowd turned on her. And not in a, just make her heel, she did some bad guy things. When I saw the promo when Becky came out, though, just to talk on that for a second, Ronda did her promo, her nonchalant thing, and she was disinterested. When Becky came out, she just seemed like a bigger star. And I get it, Becky's there every day, doing this thing day in, day out. But she felt like a bigger star. She talked like a bigger star. Kind of doing laps around her. And I know Charlotte can do the same. Maybe she is robotic. Maybe Charlotte is just kind of Charlotte, and we're kind of meh about it. Ronda does have extreme drawing power, and she will bring eyeballs. She'll bring eyeballs to SmackDown through Mania. She will bring eyeballs to WrestleMania, which is what they want. It's great. And it will be I'm sure it will be a fun match that will have its spots and moments and probably surprise fans because they can do stuff like that at Mania. But where do you go after that? What happens at Backlash or Payback? Whatever Vince is going to do for the next pay-per-views. I think this bigger problem you're still running into is that you still need to develop the rest of the divisions. One thing that I always say is that I would love to see as a fan, I'd love to see another title come into the women's division. I'd almost love there to be almost the Universal Women's Championship, personally. at the very, very top, where a Becky and Charlotte or a Ronda or Bianca, the top star, fights it out on both brands for that title. The big, big money championship. And then you can have your Raw and SmackDown women's titles, respectfully, on each brand, kind of like your IC titles. And that allows the women that are a little bit lower on the card, like a Liv Morgan or a Doudrop, to hold on to like a women's championship and make it feel like something. Because if they're not into a personal storyline that they've created, they just in fluff tag matches doing nothing. And it's all about who's at the very top. And that sucks because you want to see everyone get showcased more. And on the women's side of things, there's so much talent there that you want to be able to showcase them more too. It's always a delicate balance with WWE and when they bring in part-timers. We'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think of Ronda Rousey and her return to WWE and how things will shake up for WrestleMania.